get started. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Any additions or corrections to that? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Next item is approval of the October 19th minutes. Any corrections or additions?
Move approval of the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. First item on business is a special use permit, 2023-06 Arbor Village subdivision. Brian, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, I'll pull some plans up and we'll lead off. All right, first thing we've got tonight is special use permit 2023-06 Arbor Village subdivision. We got the applicant and Josh Cash here and his engineer, Jason Gaston, Valor Engineering. We'll turn them over here in a little bit to let them give a presentation. Just to give a quick overview, with the staff report, I do have the site plan pulled up there for reference. What Josh Cash is requesting is a special use permit for a 4-lot subdivision. As you can see, the 4 lots proposed there. Proposal is to have a duplex on each lot. If no one's familiar with where this is at, it's a piece of property that's been for sale for quite a while. Changed hands quite a few times, but it's generally located across from, probably more across from the Roadie's new bicycle shop there, the metal shopping center, and fronts on Main Street down below as well. Total 1.367 acres in the property. It is on general business. The property is located within the WS4 water supply watershed. The proposal, as you can see, is to access from 321. No access will be off Main Street down below. The proposal in the site plan, in the staff report there, just to clarify, originally it was interpreted that they were limited to 5 units, and that was based on an R6 zoning for single family, but it was basically, we did a redetermination that would be considered multifamily and based on that density instead. So what it would limit them to is 5 units per acre, which would allow them 7 units based on that 1.367 acre partial. So Jason can explain, he'll have a presentation, but basically I think what they're going to be looking for is a waiver. Instead of the 3 additional units for the 8, they'll be looking for the additional waiver of just 1 unit to get the total of 8 units. That units will have 4 bedrooms per unit. With the property being subject to the WS4 watershed, you're limited also to 24% built upon max area there. I believe they're at 21% and some change there, so they're under the 24% max. Parking based for what they are proposing is based on a 2-family residential duplex, which is 2 spaces for each dwelling unit. 16 total spaces has been provided on the site plan. I'll talk about drive access here in just a minute. Project does propose to, for sidewalk requirements, proposes a sidewalk on Main Street. It's shown down below here. There's an existing sidewalk along 321 that was installed for DOT's road widening in that area. Driveway to be proposed right now is a right in, right out. We'll leave that for any other discussion during the presentation, but right now what they've shown is a right in, right out. Stormwater management. Let me slip to a different sheet here. So they're proposing capturing all the runoff from the duplexes themselves, as well as the proposed parking area, parking spaces here. There'll be an underground detention system, which you can see is right here, collected, and then there's an outlet down at the bottom right there, you can see, right here. So they'll be capturing all the post-development runoff there. Water and sewer is proposed to be connected on the main street down below. All the utilities will be run here and connected at the bottom. Obviously, there will be some clearing in that area for the installation of those. Jason has worked with Matt with Public Works and McGill to review that, and I think everything's acceptable in that aspect. As far as landscaping, sorry, should have had these pulled up. They do have a street yard proposed along 321, as well as these areas here require a 16-foot landscape buffer on each side. The intent is to keep the remaining vegetation that's there, along with also this street yard down here. The sidewalk will be put in, but I think there's minimal disturbance for the installation of that. So the majority of the rhodos and undergrowth, and these trees you see here is also the ones being preserved in that area. So the intent is to keep most of the vegetation around here. If it's not, we'll assess it and we can supplement as necessary to meet that opaque buffer there. The project is also proposing quite a few retaining walls. Most notably, there's one here, and then at the other end, the retaining walls up here. I think there's two 12-foot walls, and then I think there's a 4 to 6 foot wall at the bottom. Ordinance does limit you to 12-foot height max. The applicant is proposing to install landscaping between the two upper walls to help buffer that a little bit, I think, as well as the one below on the bottom wall you see there. Materials are to be determined on that. I think they're open for discussions on the materials there, and obviously there's criteria in the ordinance he'll have to meet with that as well. The appearance of the buildings. I think that was in your packet. With this being single family, two family are not subject to our appearance standards. So we can't apply any standards to that, but I think the applicant is open. I think they're good looking buildings, but they're open to discussions with the materials as we move forward if this is approved. I think we had some discussions back and forth. They originally proposed some brick, which in the corridor plan that we had, brick was prohibited there, so they've changed some things over to rock. So I think what you're looking at is rock and board and batten. But I think they're open to making a good product and making it match the corridor in that area. And then they can speak to that whenever they come up. If the project's approved, they'll have to provide a lighting plan during construction drawings, as well as an erosion control plan, which we'll review. And there's also some discussion on, per the ordinance, we do have a historic tree definition on what's historic, 30 inches and greater. There is a couple trees here. There's one in particular, a 30-inch there. They'll have to be, technically, the council will approve that being removed or not approved. But there is some disturbance with that in that area, so we'll need to discuss that a little bit as we move along. Other than that, I'm open to questions. But again, I think the requested waiver, what they're looking at is for the one additional unit for a total of 8 units above the allowed 7 units.
How is it considered both multifamily and single family? Because you've switched back and forth about the standards that are applicable.
A duplex is considered two-family resident.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you get to the density section, it breaks out. It either breaks out single-family density or multifamily density if you're developing in the general business district.
Mm-hmm.
So from a density standpoint, it applies to a multifamily project. So that's why we're referencing that.
Okay.
Give me a second. So it's 1612 2.3. Lots in the RMH, residential mobile home, general business, or HMC zoning districts where residential developments are permissible, may be developed at a density equal to either the R6S district for single-family developments or the R6M for multifamily. And that's where we originally had classified them in the R6 single-family. Don't specifically speak to the two-family, so that's why it would kick back to the multifamily, 5 units per acre there. That's the main thing that's really considering that a multifamily, and it's just based on the density there.
I hear from Josh.
If they're ready to go, absolutely. No. Here's your, if you need.
Hey, I'm Jason Gaston with Our Engineering. Really be more than happy to answer questions. I'll just give you kind of a brief synopsis about the design philosophy, because I think some other plans have been presented, or maybe you've seen some things on this property before. It's not an easy piece of property. You all know that. It's kind of a little bit steep. It's about 50 feet of elevation change somewhere in there. And so there are really 2 ways we kind of looked at it, just so you kind of know iteratively how we got where we got to. First was, could we do a project off of Main Street? Was that even practical? Or should we come off Blowing Rock Boulevard? So why we wound up off Blowing Rock Boulevard, so you understand, it really came down to earthwork and disturbing cut versus fill. If we came off of Main Street, we're going to be in a tremendous amount of cut, which was going to cause really a lot more damage to the existing vegetation that was there, and potential rock issues, other things, in addition to the fact that the floodplain is down on the lower corner here. So the next logical thing is, well, what if we did the project off of Blowing Rock Boulevard? And so when you're working back with topography, that's why a residential product also seemed to work better here as opposed to a traditional commercial project, because it fits the land better. You have more flexibility with a residential product, whether that's single family or duplex. We're able to kind of fit it down the slope, use the lower levels for residential living space, we still have crawl spaces of course, but use that kind of as our way to step down towards Main Street. So that was really the general design philosophy. Main Street project or Blowing Rock Boulevard project? It's a Blowing Rock Boulevard project. Is that okay for residential? We believe so. There's obviously some other residential development along Blowing Rock Boulevard. And specifically about this property is it's super walkable to downtown. One of the things we also looked at with Main Street access and coming off the back of the buildings, was it even going to be feasible for people to walk out their back doors, go down 40 steps and get on Main Street to go back up to downtown? And I think there was a diagram included in your package that showed some sidewalk things we looked at. So that also kind of drove the design from Blowing Rock Boulevard, because it just made more sense to walk out your front door, kind of hang around that same elevation down to Sunset and then up Sunset. So in general, that was what drove us to where we were. Obviously, we looked at some other uses, but this particular use from a residential standpoint seemed to fit the property the best from a conservation standpoint, as far as minimizing land disturbance, keeping the big part of this, which was the most critical part after we looked at it, which was preserving as much vegetation along Main Street as possible to buffer the back of the project. Obviously, we're going to see some of these units, they're going to be high compared to Main Street, but you can see how much land we're preserving. It's also land that's in the floodplain. It's good to preserve vegetation things there. And as you move, of course, plan north, it's going to be more and more visible as you come down. But that was the best way we could come up with to maintain kind of the visual impact it would have, especially on Main Street. On Blowing Rock Boulevard, it's going to look like a two-story building, not much there. So in general, that was our design philosophy. That's kind of how things fell out the way they did. And I'm sure you guys would probably have some questions for me, but I just wanted you to understand kind of how we got to where we got to.
How far off the right of way are you?
Let's see.
I'm talking about the front door of the unit to the right of way.
To the right of way. So we have, let's see, a 20-foot setback here, roughly off the right of way. So I think that's roughly the middle of the street, which is 18. So that was another 9, and it's 2 feet. So you're probably looking at 30-ish feet from the front door to the right of way, plus the additional space from the right of way to the street. It's about 33 feet to the right of way line itself, and then probably another 5 to 10 feet depending on where you are with the skew.
So from here to the front door, you're looking at residential structures along Valley Boulevard
Correct, yes, sir.
and no screening to speak of.
There'll be street trees per for your street ordinance requirements. As far as screening with like a fence or anything, there is nothing proposed for that right now. We'd be open to that, but nothing for that is proposed now.
And you were talking about the slope of the land being 50 feet. So if I'm standing on the sidewalk, am I going to be level with these buildings?
Yes.
Are they going to be set down, or are you going to have to backfill to make them level through there?
Can you
But at
go
least
to-
the front door there.
Sure. So roughly, because we kind of made this a project off of Blowing Rock Boulevard, everything is going to be very close to the same elevation as Blowing Rock Boulevard. We don't have a lot of space to pick up the grade because everything, once you get in there, we just have to kind of maintain 5% slopes just for the driveway purposes. So you're going to be roughly on grade here. And if you have the sidewalk diagram as well, that shows you roughly these finished floors are about the same elevation as the sidewalk in front of it here. And this is where you're much lower back here. So these will all be roughly, if you're sitting on the sidewalk here, you'll be looking straight at the front door.
Okay.
I believe the buildings are proposed at 31 feet. That'll be measured at the primary entrance of the building. Obviously, like he was saying on the rear, it is going to be significantly higher. I don't have a measurement for that, but the front's set at 31 feet.
And so you addressed it, and thank you for addressing it already, but the view from Main Street, because they are going to be up high, but there's also the steepest part of the grade is where they cut Main Street in a century ago or whenever. But did you guys look at putting up a screening wall down low so that if you're either driving on Main Street or walking on the sidewalk opposite, the one adjacent to Chitola, but opposite your the property, that you could use that grade in a shorter wall? I don't know if you looked at it at all, but to look at visual screening.
So visual screening from Main Street's difficult. because we're 40+ feet in elevation change, how tall does a fence, if you're 10 feet away from a fence, how tall does it need to be to screen something that's 40 feet tall-ish, plus the 30 feet on top of that, 70 or 80 feet away? There's really no way to do that without trees, which is why we were trying really, in the spirit of that, preserve the most effective screening there, which was tall trees. A fence along the sidewalk that we proposed there would have to be so tall. I mean, you're talking a 10 or 15 foot tall fence to really screen that visual corridor if you're driving up Main Street. So no, that didn't seem practical. It certainly didn't seem to fit that drive would have an obstruction like that, as opposed to just keeping the vegetation as much as we could. So if you can kind of see the retaining wall, the top of the retaining wall is roughly the sidewalk elevation. Imagine the building's also another 30 feet, 31 feet above that. So how tall would this screen need to be to shelter or protect that view? It would, trees.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, if you can leave the rhododendron intact. This angle is almost impossible, and I get that.
Yeah.
It's more of, if you move 50, 75 feet down the road from where this picture was taken, you've got that rhododendron screening right now,
Yeah.
but it's also a vertical surface. I mean, those rocks are nearly, like that rock face is almost straight up. But, I mean, if you're leaving the majority, I know you have to cut for utilities at some point, but other than that, if you're leaving the rest, it'd be great.
That was the intent, and we're adding again evergreens below the retaining wall, because actually, can you go back to that view for just a second, Ron? This is my most concerned view, because we'll have the tiered retaining walls kind of right here. So this is where we were planning on putting vegetation below the walls and in between the steps walls, because to me, this would be the most impacted view right at this moment. You're going to see the structures appear the tallest, and you're also going to have a visual of the retaining walls that are here. So this was the view that I was most concerned with, and why we put additional vegetation below those walls.
Can you walk me through where the sidewalks will be and what the linear foot and the square footage is of those?
Oh, I don't know what we can estimate the linear footage. Can you pull up even the site plan rating, that'd be fine. So we're keeping the existing sidewalk, which is kind of grayed out here along Valley Boulevard. That's staying, we're just carrying that across our entrance. Again, that's the biggest amenity for us, was to make sure it's walkable to downtown, and that's, you walk out your front door and you're on the sidewalk there. As far as Main Street, I originally didn't even have sidewalk on Main Street. And oops on me, because that's a ordinance requirement. So I can pull up a CAD drawing, I just don't remember how many linear feet that was. But essentially it's from pipe to pipe, which is kind of where the town's already stopped and started. Let's see. I'm gonna guess it's somewhere around 200-ish feet is my guess.
Okay.
We would happily, I think, I'm not thinking for Josh here, but we would happily make a donation or pay a fee in lieu, or because it's a piece of sidewalk that number one doesn't connect on either end. It doesn't also really provide. Again, I wanted to purposely avoid bringing people down a treacherous set of stairs to get to a piece of sidewalk that you didn't have to walk back uphill to get to downtown. So it really doesn't add any value to this property or this project specifically yet. I'm sure it will in the future, but this is the trigger point for everybody, including you guys. So I can, if you can give me a few minutes, I can find out exactly how many linear feet that was, but I'll say this again, we would happily pay a fee in lieu or donation or something in lieu of building this portion, because it just really doesn't help.
Yeah, and it adds to the town's infrastructure and maintenance.
Yeah, and it would really, who's gonna use that? Same idea. We went through that same discussion with utilities. Like, we originally looked at public utilities for this. Well, it's one thing to cause a burden to the taxpayers and the town to maintain infrastructure if it makes sense for future development, but it's the same with utilities here. This was really going to serve 4 lots for water and sewer, period, at the end. It's the same for the sidewalk, is just really servicing, you know, your residents at the expense of maintaining it.
Sure.
But there is also stormwater involved with it as well. There's stormwater pipes, inlets that also, if you see in the grading plan, are also installed here along with the curb and gutter because we're filling in a ditch line essentially with it. So yeah,
Where are the tie-ins with the utilities? My plan is so small, I'm having a hard time.
yeah, that's C3.
See
Pull that up. So water and sewer already exist along Main Street. This is where the existing driveway is for the residents that have this right here essentially. The sewer comes through here, so that made, you know, the most logical sense to pull off the sewer laterals there. And then set a gang meter box here. There's already existing water meter here to service the rest of these. You know, this is the part I didn't really, you know, we try to, this is, hopefully this will be minimized. In other words, I can't really draw this and show individual lines and show up. And I mean, we'll be able to share trenches with PEX water lines. So hopefully this swath of water lines won't be, you know, 15 feet wide. Hopefully it'll be 6 or 7. But that's in general where they are, water and sewer both, and they're all private.
And you're pulling, to finish the utilities, you're pulling power and cable off of 321?
That's the intent for now. You know, there's the line, obviously, with the transformer and the pole, if you saw it there. We really haven't discussed it yet, where they want to come from. Either way, we'll have a nice transformer back here, but I would assume they're going to want to have their meters somewhere in the fronts of the buildings to make it easy for them to read. But, you know, with the digital meters now, maybe they don't even care. We haven't really discussed too much with power, but the assumption is it'll either come off the pole that's here on the north end of the side with the transformer you've all seen already on it, or on 320.
Why lot lines?
You don't like my lot lines?
Well, it's kind of funny, but.
Can you go back to the site plan for me, Brian? This is funny. This is a comment that came up during the review. It's like, what are the non-conventional lot lines? Look, I don't want to do this. And the surveyor that is going to plat this, you know, is going to shoot me. Here's the reasoning. So the overall project has to meet the intent of the watershed, 24% impervious. But each individual lot also has to meet that. So if I just drew straight lines, because the property is kind of like a pie shape, if I was just to draw straight lines like this, well, lot number 1's going to have a lot more area and have a lot less percentage impervious than say lot number 2 and lot number 3. So I had to capture
That's
area.
why I was asking why lot lines. If you don't have any lot lines, then you don't have that issue.
Oh, sure. Well, to keep it individually deeded for duplex, that's why we did that. So we want to be able to have individual ownership with the, you know, for these. So that's why they're that way.
But you have to have some kind of, because your parking's not aligning with your lots, you then have to have.
Access easements. There should have been an access easement plan included. And there will, the POA is really going to control most of this, maintenance of all the frontage and infrastructure as far as parking goes. It's really almost like a townhouse style development where you're going to be responsible for maintenance of your structure, but really outside the walls of your structure, the POA is involved. How do we maintain walls that are shared across property lines? How do we maintain a stormwater system that's shared across property lines? Or driveways that are shared with multiple people? Well, it just makes sense to have the POA as one entity maintain that. Otherwise, your retaining walls falling over on your property, but I share it with you. Well, it's yours. Just doesn't make sense. So the POA is controlling just about all of everything. Utilities included, access, stormwater, retaining walls. That just seemed to be the, as was suggested, the most effective way for maintenance.
You also the builder on this? He's the builder. Okay,
I'm just the engineer. I just draw the pictures and
okay. And then I'll wait till he comes up. Okay.
This is on the
overlay district for short-term rental, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
It is.
Short terms are allowed there.
Okay. Is there potential for these units to become short-term?
It is allowed, and they could apply for short-term rental. Now, they would be limited to, they'd be limited to what the parking's being provided there.
So that's, right now, the rate, I think it's 1 per bedroom. And these are half per bedroom right now?
So they'd be limited to two bedrooms because of the parking.
So that's the way you would handle that?
It's a disadvantage to the property owners by not having that parking. But we could only permit what the parking is provided for each unit.
Okay.
Because you could have potentially 64 people staying there at one time. If you add up the bedrooms, 4 per unit, 8 per building, 32 for the project, that's 64 people staying there. I mean, you know, so that does become an issue with parking, so where'd they park?
I think, I'll try not to speak out of turn, we talked about, you know, if you think about duplex, a lot of times people are gonna purchase duplexes so they can offset their mortgage with some type of rental, whether short-term or long-term. It's gonna have to be heavily influenced and mitigated by the POA, first of all. If you're gonna rent half your duplex, you have 4 spaces for your duplex. If you want 1, fine, you can let potential tenants have 3. But it's gonna be very specific in whatever lease agreement, or whatever short-term lease agreement. If you're coming here to rent this, I don't care if you bring 10 people, y'all better have 1 car. It's just gonna have to be what it is. You can't open this up to multiple cars. I mean, you can have 2, obviously, or if you own 1 duplex and you've got 4 total spaces and you wanna just have 1 space for yourself in your garage, sure, you can have your other half of your unit have 3 spaces. But it's gonna have to be pretty well policed by the POA, otherwise it's gonna be a matter of minutes before somebody complains about you parking in my space. So I think it's POA having control over part of that, but also the individual property owner, when those lease agreements are up, it's gonna be the POA having to make sure the lease agreements, whether short or long-term, specifies the number of parking spaces. So if that deters people from renting short or long-term, it is what it is, but you're gonna have to specify as an owner here, if I'm renting this, my potential tenant has access to 1, 2, or 3 spaces.
So we don't have any ordinance at all about number of bedrooms, it's just units, as opposed to number of bedrooms or number of baths for parking.
We would enforce bedrooms. I mean, they'd only be allowed what's allowed now with those 2 parking spaces, so 2 bedroom max. And is that an enforcement nightmare? Probably.
Again, I think there's some language that can happen in POA structures. If you purchase something here, it's gonna be very clear in the covenants. You're allowed 4 parking spaces, period. You want 1 for yourself, okay. You want 2 for yourself, you want 3 for yourself, but that's it. So if you decide to rent it, you're going to have to specify how many you have and how many your potential tenant has. I don't really see another way around that. You can't just open this up for carte blanche. It's a 4-bedroom unit. Bring your 15 people. Well, sure, you can if you bring a bus and you can park your bus in the space, but you got 2 parking spaces. That's going to have to be clearly put in lease agreements or advertising.
There's no, I mean, the good thing is there's no practical way for them to impede other residences by overparking it, right? So, like if they are overparked, they go
Pretty
to,
tight, yeah.
they go to the food line, right? I mean, like that, there's nowhere else to park. And as opposed to, I would say, in the middle of a residential neighborhood where all of a sudden people are parking in the lawn of somebody else's lawn and that kind of stuff. There's no real option here. Like it is tight little site.
I assume then if your garage becomes a storage unit, like mine has, you're just gonna have your one outside, you're not gonna, I guess the POA would handle the, I could foresee somebody parking in front of the garage, in other words, as a second. And again,
People get creative, no doubt. But one of the comments that came out of the review was making sure we clearly numbered and labeled the parking spaces for each unit on the plan.
So
This probably just has to be done on the ground if there's issues with it.
So looking at the table of parking requirements, I assume we didn't go, you guys looked at 1310, which is multifamily, but you designated this as duplex, which gives you 2 per or 4. But if it was multifamily, which by my calculations, you would need 22 spaces for this.
It's the same with single family. We really need 2 spaces per unit. So, single family duplex.
Yeah. Most communities outside of Blowing Rock, or if you have 4 bedrooms, require approximately 2.4 to 2.6 parking spaces per unit. So, I guess it makes a requirement, but it's awful tight. And to me, it's tight.
It is a very tight site, and it is not a place where you're going to teach your kids to drive. It's not a place to live if you want to try to do that. But again, the biggest amenity and draw is the walkability. So that's what's very unique about this. If we were on 5 acres out 2 miles away, we'd have 20 parking spaces, sure. Being as steep as this property is, as small as it is, it's just not really practical to add much more parking. We just couldn't do it.
Well, you can. You just need to take 1 unit away.
Well, sure, yeah. That's always, yeah.
You can't.
We can exchange buildings for parking, sure.
Yeah, you can do it.
You can put conditions on the special use permit. That's more enforceable for staff as well. Example, no storage in your parking garage. For car, not storage. Some of those things are enforceable with us a little bit better. It's in your purview to put conditions on. I think you're spot on, and I think we do need to cross, and, I think Jason, he can speak to it, is requesting a waiver for more units. I think that's a decision you've got to weigh, parking, waiving another unit, so you raise a good point. That's for you to decide.
The driveway, it's an access easement, the existing dirt driveway to the house down south of there.
Yes.
That remains,
Yes.
regardless if there's development on that property, that easement still remains.
Correct.
It's in an easement now on the existing property, so it'll just have to be worked out.
So the idea behind the retaining walls on the north end, the 3 of them,
Yes.
you can go to a maximum of 12 feet, but there's no limit to the number. Is that how we got to? Because I'm hearing 24, 30, 31 feet-ish.
Roughly.
So you could have built 1, but that wouldn't work. So you've done 3 12 or 2 12s and
Tiered. That's
tiered. Okay, and that's all right.
What kind of system will those be? Will it be an interlocking? Will it be stone? Do you know what the material will be for that?
The only thing I know it won't be are the large 11 blocks that everybody does not like. My vision for it is it would be an MSE, so it would be the smaller block, which aesthetically looks the best. That's my vision for it, but again, as was said, that's something for discussion. I would prefer to see that. It's usually the best ease of construction, and those just have a pretty longevity wise. They'll last a long time. So that's what I would like to see. That's what I propose, but it is available for discussion. The gravity wall blocks, everybody's are ugly, is off the table. We do know that. So.
We do have some limitations in the ordinance for it to be certain materials.
Okay, good.
And the POA would handle the stormwater containment area, the underground stormwater containment area moving forward.
Correct. They're responsible for maintaining that infrastructure, yes. That's pretty common for POAs with ponds.
So there are no plans to have a left turn off of Valley Boulevard going north into this. The way I'm just reading this, two curb cut accesses are one right in, right out.
Yeah, both curb cut, if we had two, which I originally did,
Yeah.
that's still right in, right out.
Okay, so it'd be one at one end, one at the other end, roughly?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's still gonna create an issue for U-turns at Sunset and Main Street, I would think.
But I mean, this is not feasible and practical to try to go across Route 21 for this
No,
project.
I didn't know if there was even any talk of a left turn access coming in there. No. Okay.
Well, you have any other engineering questions, feel free to just ask me. At this point, if you guys want to ask Josh a few questions, I'll let him speak.
Hey, Josh Cash, Cash Custom Homes. So Jason touched on a lot of the things that kind of drove early design. And for me, it was always trying to keep the rock and the roto buffer on Main is like the priority. So like if that was clipped, it would just change that entrance corridor considerably. So from that, everything else was driven. So construction questions, anything else you guys have, I'd be happy to try to answer for you.
So you're talking 4 bedrooms per unit, is that correct?
Correct.
And how many baths?
Probably 4.
Okay.
The way, because of the way it steps down, we just kind of had a lot of space. So it's inexpensive area to fill rather than just having a large crawl. And then you also add windows, you add the potential for decks. It shows better rather than having this really tall stack. So like I said, it's pretty inexpensive space to gain. So the topography drove the overall size and the number of bedrooms more than anything else.
But just with the 4 bedrooms, 4 baths, it almost sounds like it's being built for rental versus owner occupied, or considering we have a housing shortage here, for people. That's why.
Well, I'm designing a personal home, and we've got a bedroom and a bathroom for nobody wants to share bathrooms. Kids don't want to share bathrooms.
Right.
And so one of the original things that I thought of was, when we go on vacation, we try to find a house. Every kid wants a bedroom, every kid wants a bathroom. So I'm thinking as a family traveling, and having something that's close to downtown. And so, the parking I see as a concern, but it was always for me like could see it being a family-driven property that someone could come in, one vehicle, and everybody has their space. So you're not packing 4 families in there. It's one family that could utilize it.
So you're thinking more of a seasonal resident living there versus somebody buying it and then renting it weekly or nightly, or?
Yeah, my thought has gone several ways. I think right now, probably leaning towards selling it, but the fact that it could be rented and it is short-term kind of leaves all options open for me or someone that I would sell to. I have clients that I built for that are living in the townhomes beside the fire department. And they're living there long enough for us to build their forever home, and then they're going to move. I've got clients that, faculty and staff at ASU or doctors coming into town, can't find housing. So there's all the time a need for a family and a need for something close to downtown with a full kitchen, a garage. It's not a hotel.
Can I speak to the floor plan for a second? 'Cause I'm not sure if you all have these pages in your report.
We have the pictures, we have exterior pictures, do not have floor plans.
So I'll tell you a little about the floor plan, because that was originally a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath house that we did. So the way the floor plan works, you kind of see this on the site plan you leave right here. Opposite the garage, this is the main floor, so you're walking in here on the garage level with your door here. This is the open dining living space, okay? There's a half bath here, and then you go downstairs, go to the basement, we'll talk about in a second, and then you also go up the stairs as soon as you walk in, right up here. Upstairs, it's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. One's a master, just so you understand. It's got a bedroom with bathroom in it. The other are 2 bedrooms that share a Jack and Jill style bathroom. So upstairs is 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, main levels, half bath. Downstairs was where we're like, okay, well, look on your pictures, the bottom floor, half of it's eaten up by filling in for the garage. So we really just kind of have this space here. What would we do there? We just did a big bedroom with another bathroom and kind of a small den area if you wanted to have your kind of man cave down there. So that's kind of how the floor plan originated, with 4 bedrooms, really 3.5 baths is what it is. But it was really a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath house, and then we had the benefit of adding the basement level, which kind of gives you bonus area with a bedroom and then a full bath. So that's right or wrong, how we kind of wound up at the floor plan that you haven't had the benefit of seeing. But that's what kind of drove everything else. So don't just want to add that.
Thank you.
I'm not an architect. For the record, clearly.
Any other questions? So our purpose is to come up with some conditions, if we want, to convey to council as they would consider they'll hold a public hearing and consider the approval of the permit and establish the conditions. But we can make suggestions, I guess.
Yeah, I think you got the right to recommend denial or approval. But if you recommend approval, see if it conditions, you can apply those. I do think you need to weigh in on the waiver they're asking for. These units are they've got the right to rent these. There is some limitations on possible short-term limitations, and I think they realize that.
Yeah. I think you made a good argument on the density, because it's the way the chart is on density. It's mixing watershed requirements and then town requirements basically in that table, because the watershed ordinance doesn't mention dwelling units per acre. It's just percentages. And that's something the town has added to that table, which I think makes it more confusing if that was not there.
So I think you weigh out, Jason gave you a kind of a narrative of the request that was based on 5 units requesting the 8. So just, I think you take into consideration the 7 units now compared to the 8.
Well, it wouldn't be economically feasible to have 7, would it? When you get into construction, I mean, thinking about it, you're gonna cut one half of one building off?
Have 3.5 buildings.
3.5 buildings. So, I mean, that's,
Yeah, I mean, especially with that style, the Italian style, it does hurt. And you've got one skinny unit.
it definitely fits the highest use. The best use, I'm not sure of, but I do like the highest part of that in terms of generating property tax revenue for the town. So, looking at it from that perspective.
I would kind of like to see a buffer on 321. It would act as a sound barrier, hopefully, and it would ease the look, like they have down there across from the daycare center. Instead of those buildings sitting, here we are. And, you know, something like that, hopefully little trees or something. I don't know if they'd live. Just a thought for the council to consider.
So the trees that they've proposed on 321 aren't enough? Or?
Well, what I'm afraid of, if they could put little fast-growing pines or something, when they slag the roads, it'll probably kill them puppies. So I'm thinking it's just something to ease them. Here we are, 4 big buildings. Just like across from the daycare center.
My concern is I wouldn't want them pushing back further toward Main Street. Like the back of the buildings, like if they could do that without moving the back of the buildings toward Main Street, that'd be
I
great.
understand that. I don't know how wide a buffer it'd have to be, 8, 12 inches, I don't know.
I don't know.
It's a strong fence.
The landscape buffer varies from, I think on the bottom end, 6 feet up to 10 feet. They've got the average of what's required, but they've got up to 10 feet in that space. Now, we have let the applicant know that there's limitations on fences out front. You know, that they would, someone buys the property, you're gonna be limited on what kind of fence you can put out there. Vegetation obviously makes sense, I think. I think that's something y'all can, I think you well can suggest that. We would have to take into consideration any kind of site visibility issues or anything like that, I think.
So I'm just gonna throw this out there, more as a devil's advocate kind of thing. The comprehensive plan that's still in draft form, vision for Valley Boulevard is for open space and commercial development. I'm just curious if this is in the spirit of that vision.
Your comprehensive plan is your guiding document, but there is allowed uses there now.
I understand. I'm just throwing it out there. So it's just something that's crossed my mind more than once.
You know, I think that's a good point. I'm concerned about the tightness of the parking. I'm concerned about the visual effect of being right on Valley Boulevard. And I'm also concerned about the quaintness of the town from Main Street and looking back up the hill and seeing that. Those things all, in my mind, conflict with what a long-term vision might be.
So my perspective is, I mean, it would be great if it were commercial, but it is a narrow site. And trying to think, like, how would you stuff a restaurant and with parking on that site? Well, I mean, you could flatten every, I mean, you could take a bunch more trees out.
You could, yeah.
And create more of a visual thing. I mean, I've thought about this because it is a commercial corridor, it is general business zoning. But it's a narrow relatively speaking, it's a narrow site because the back of it has a rock, I mean, it's essentially a rock face, it's a vertical, not usable. And, you know, I look at it from the perspective of, yeah, it'd be great if it could be commercial, but I'm not sure what you could do and park there. Like, what could you put parking, it would have to be tiny, right, to have parking requirements met. And so if it's gonna be residential, my perspective on the waiver, going back, Brian, to your primary thing was, I'd rather see 8 than 7. Just, if you're gonna do it. And then, like, to me, the big thing is the landscaping, the front, you know, like Joe was just talking about, the Main Street particularly, the view from the Main Street side back up to this is a huge deal. And, you know, if the units are sold and you don't retain them, but if they're sold, the buyers are gonna have to think really long and hard about the parking situation. Because there's no side yard to go pull your RV into. You know, this is it. So that's a market thing in the end, right? And it's a certain kind of user that's gonna either buy it or rent it. And it's gonna be somebody that's 2-car max household, you know, I mean, which is fine. I mean, it is what it is. But that's my perspective. You know, again, I think commercial would be great, but I just don't know what you're gonna put in.
Yeah, I understand, I just, you know, it is out there.
Yeah,
And it was-
for sure.
There was no mention of residential at all. It was, whatever the percentages were, it was open space and commercial, period. And it's not up to us to really fix this or figure it out. It's just whether or not this.
Well, I mean, I
Makes
think that's a
sense.
decision you tackle in the long run with your comp plan. Yeah, that's policy decision you'll have to figure out. I don't think in this situation you really base your decision on the comp plan. But I know there've been questions out there of preserving general business as commercial or for business. But we can't really base that decision on that, I don't think.
Do we have the opportunity to not do the sidewalk on Main? Can we?
I think council would have that authority to waive that. I think in this situation, not speaking for council, but why would we not provide a sidewalk there? There is connection down to Doc's Rocks at this point, or not, yeah, the jewelry shop there. And there's potential for it to connect on out to 321.
I think that's the strongest argument, is that connection to 321.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mostly for the sake of these units, because
it's true.
would you rather have the shorter walk down to that intersection and get off of 321 or go all the way down to Cornish or Sunset?
We don't have a set fee in lieu for that. I mean, it's.
What would be the added hours for maintenance infrastructure for that? Do we know?
For
I
the
just worry
sidewalk.
about- Yeah, I just worry about overworking the employees that we currently have.
I'm not sure how to answer that. I mean, we would accept the sidewalk.
Okay.
And it's typical with any project. It's built, we accept, if it's, you know, built to standards and we accept it, we accept the maintenance of it.
That's fair.
I think that's the benefit of the sidewalks for the town as a whole.
Sure.
Now, there's places that don't connect, but the theory is they will connect. And they may happen a lot faster than you think sometimes. I think the positive with the sidewalk on Main Street is they're really not doing a lot of disturbance there. I think they've got the right of way. There may be some easement they'd have to look at for maintenance as we take it on, but I don't think they're really disturbing any of the vegetation down there.
So conditions, I've heard 2. additional buffer along 321, vegetative buffer, or a physical barrier.
I can tell you plants are not going to solve the noise issue there. It may screen it, but I wouldn't rely on that as a noise barrier.
Well, that's the buyer's responsibility, isn't it?
I think that's just something the applicant
Called due
has to
diligence the
accept.
last time I looked. but, you know.
I'm more concerned about easing the visual.
Well, that part I like. That's the part I like, and the vegetation I think will do it. But as far as noise goes, I mean, that's what the buyer, he's got to decide whether he wants it or not.
Wow, I was just trying to sell it to that guy.
Anything
Personally,
else?
I think vegetation and the aesthetics of the front of the building look better than a fence or, you know, something, and then something that gets splattered with salt. And, I mean, you speak to the salt, but it's gotta splatter up. I don't think the one near the fire department looks particularly great. I think they did that more for sound, right? When the road was widened, anybody know? That's right. They did more for sound. You know, I think vegetation is gonna look better than a solid wall.
I agree. But I'm looking at it between the sidewalk and the parking area, as opposed to just right up against the building. Well, that would be my caveat, if we do our thing here.
Any other conditions you want to mention?
I just want to ask Brian one question. Maybe the developer can answer this too. Okay, so I buy one of these and I decide I'm going to run a office out of there. Real estate office, tax office. And I'm not talking about living there. I'm talking about a business condominium type of situation. Is that going to be prevented? So you cannot, buy it and then use it as an office or a general business, since we're in the general business and commercial zone?
As a use, it would be prohibited. Now, we
Okay.
do have certain requirements. Kevin might can speak to it better than I can. We do have home occupations that's allowed.
Well, I get that part. I'm
But
talking about.
as far
having-
as,
yeah,
no.
Okay. All right.
I mean, the special use permit will be based on what's approved here.
Make your motion.
I make the motion that we let the guy, Mr. Cash, do it, but we need to put in our thoughts. Obviously, you know my thought already.
Right. So you're talking about vegetation.
Some kind of barrier to ease the vision, that's all I'm asking for.
And grant the 8 units as opposed to 7.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Well, it's 4 buildings instead of 3.5 buildings.
That's right.
I don't have an issue with that.
So there's no discussion about dropping it down to 3 buildings and increasing parking?
That read in my mind, but have at it.
I mean, I'm still can't get comfortable with this parking situation.
That's another.
I'm
due
not,
diligence issue.
period. So I don't know really what to say, but.
That's a pretty much a state-run deal, how many parking spaces you need for each building or.
Well, they're meeting the minimum requirement.
But it's,
That was what duplex was
duplexes,
chosen
but not for
instead of
multifamily.
townhouse.
but you're not making it for multifamily, but the way you got into the duplexes, you made 4 lots, pretty much, right?
I mean, that's a decision of the board here.
Okay.
I mean, I think they understand they've got 2 spaces per unit. Will that limit them on what they sell? I mean, could be some limitations on short term. It could be some limitations on their market, but that's not for, the market's not for us to decide. Short term, we'll deal with short term as, if they're permitted there, and we'll base it on the situation that's there.
If I may, from the town's standpoint, gets approved, gets built like this, all this, from the town's standpoint, do they have to maintain like clear, is that a fire lane? Do they have to maintain clear driveways in front of each unit from a regulatory standpoint?
They would. I mean, the parking is designated where the parking's at.
Right, and so, I mean, my question of, I guess to the end of it is the enforceability of this, of the unit at the top, unit 1A, as an example on this graphic that you have up, if in addition to the garage and the two spaces, okay, or at the bottom there, I mean, so in 4A there, if cars in the garage and two more cars are parked in the driving aisle in front of that garage, is that a fire access problem? And is that something that the town would care about?
Yeah, and I think it could be signed as well.
I mean, I think that's in the end of, like, we can look at this and say, I'm looking at this, and all due respect to your perspective, I just don't think we need proliferation of parking if this meets code, but we're looking at how it's supposed to work. And if it doesn't operate that way, there needs to be a way to come back and say, look, you can't have 6 extra cars parked in these dead end bays here. I mean, if nothing else, for fire reasons, but
Right.
would the town be able to come back and?
I think that could be, and it could be enforceable with the POA as well. Maybe more teeth with that in the POA.
And their insurance company.
In its current configuration, it would prohibit short-term rental because of the lack of parking,
It would be based on 2 bedrooms per unit.
but they're not, they're more than, they're 4 bedrooms.
Right.
So that would prohibit short-term rental.
Yeah, 4 people per car.
We've had units convert to less bedrooms because of parking. Now, we haven't enforced any of that, but we have had that situation.
That's an option too. Combine some, take down some walls and create a new 2-bedroom unit.
Josh, how many square feet are you looking at in each one?
I'm embarrassed to say that it's been so site-driven. I haven't spent a lot of time on anything building-wise. I mean, with you laying them out, do you remember what the?
Yeah, they're 46 inch, or 46 inch, that's funny. 46 feet deep. Garage is 12, 16, roughly 46 by 46 by 36 roughly.
There's some units, I guess it's on Bamboo near Turtle Creek. And they're very similar. Like the entrance to Turtle Creek, at least the main level, you know, the size of the parking. I think there's 3 bedrooms up. I mean, very, very similar to them. We just, the only difference is the lower level because of the spot.
I think I'm estimating roughly, no, this includes the garage area, about 2,400 square feet per side. So total full duplex would be, 4,800. But you're looking at, 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, roughly 2,400 square feet somewhere in there.
I think I'd like to ask a question, just to broaden what you wanted to know. If we stay with the 7 units, so you got a half a building that's gone, how many parking spaces would that give us, extra parking spaces?
2. Looking at that, 2, maybe 3.
Yes, it would be only 2, wouldn't it?
Well, how would that even work, Ron, with zoning officer? Now we have single family use. So how does that work? So half a unit is single family, it's not duplex. So what does that do?
I think it would eliminate the building.
Just asking. More information.
And that just works out to the 1.367 in the way the math works. We rounded up to the 7 there.
So do we have a
Got a
motion?
motion on the table.
Second.
Chris, second. Chris. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And have you got the conditions?
It was the barriers, the buffers, and then
And granting the additional unit.
granted the additional, yes.
All right, next item, review of the town's comprehensive plan.
I'm gonna turn that over. I think he's got a presentation for you.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Anybody need a break? We just gonna keep rolling. All right, let's do it. I agree.
But it's mercifully short.
Just read every page, it'll be fine.
In the beginning.
That was life.
Everybody
We'll
got
throw something at
You
you.
got a case.
I don't know if I'm gonna let you.
I was on the, it was open already. All right, thank you, Vaughn Hanson, Benchmark Planning, Jason and Bridget send their regrets. Bridget is on a tour of New Zealand and Australia this week. And Jason, I told Kevin, I got to come to the better place. He's down in Packlet, South Carolina tonight, presenting down there. So, thank you again for having me. Glad to be here and presenting the planning board draft of the comprehensive plan that we've been working on since back in April. The purpose of the comprehensive plan is to establish a community-based vision for the future of the town of Blowing Rock, guide land use growth, development, guide capital improvements, investments, and community initiatives, and also maintain compliance with Chapter 160D of the North Carolina General Statutes, required now by statute to adopt and reasonably maintain a comprehensive plan in order to enforce land use regulations. We had a wonderful steering committee, 3 of the members on the planning board here. I have one in the audience as well. Led us through this process, along with Kevin and Brian, had a really great interaction with staff during this process. Timeline, as I mentioned, we started back in April. We've actually completed this process fairly quickly, very expeditiously and efficiently. Initiated the project back then, did background research over the spring, had initial public input from the community in June, and prepared the draft comprehensive plan following that through July and October, and had the initial input, or public input on the draft plan on October 30th, and are doing the final portions here, presenting to the planning board, and ultimately the council will have a public hearing on it following your recommendation. As I mentioned, we did engage with the public primarily at 2 different points. All the steering committees meetings were open, and we did have some folks that were pretty regular attendees coming to those meetings. We had an open house June 19th down in the American Legion building. Had 40 people come in person. We also had an opportunity for people to engage with the tasks that we had, or the exercises that we had online. We were seeking input on the vision for the comprehensive plan, some other topics that we were working on. So we had another 53 people do the online version of the public meeting as well. And then our October 30th meeting, I think we probably had about 25 people who showed up. We had it in here. Good turnout, a lot of good discussions, got a lot of additional recommendations for the plan, strategies, recommendations that were included in there, went back to the committee following that. So we did have good interactions from the community during the process. Just a brief overview of the plan here. There's 3 main parts to the plan: an introduction that contains some of the background of why we're doing the plan, the vision, the different focus areas, the structure of the plan itself, background section on the community, different data that we acquired during the process, other plans that have been adopted by the town over the last 10 years. And then the final section talks about the future of Blowing Rock. Basically on those, again, the vision, the objectives, implementation strategies, and a future land use map are the key components of that. The vision statement, we went back to the original vision statement from 2014. We reviewed it as part of this process. We looked at the
strategies as well that were recommended at that time. But we essentially came with a new vision statement, or a slightly altered vision statement. It says, the shared vision for the future of the town of Blowing Rock is one of a vibrant mountain resort community that welcomes all with its charming authenticity and unique sense of place. And then there's some additional statements that back up that vision that we spent a lot of time crafting, actually, and revising those to make sure that it captured the essence of what the community wanted and what the steering committee felt most appropriately represented the vision for the town of Blowing Rock. As I mentioned, there are 4 primary focus areas of this plan: downtown, connectivity, development, and municipal services. And I'll go through each of those, give some examples. So the downtown objective was to preserve and enhance downtown Blowing Rock as the vibrant cultural centerpiece of the community. We have some strategies that go along with that, 14 in total, going back to revising zoning, architectural design standards to differentiate between East and West Main Street, looking at potential improvements to the intersection of Sunset and Main, considering a downtown municipal service district, among many others that were crafted during the process. Connectivity, that objective is to ensure that all residents can freely move in and around the town through a variety of transportation modes. So a lot of what we focused on there were things like developing and implementing a community-wide bicycle plan, 9 strategies in total, but these highlights requiring preservation of greenway corridors and supporting construction of the Middle Fork Greenway through the rest of the town. The development objective was to manage the appearance, location, and characteristics of future development so that they could complement and enhance the town of Blowing Rock. 15 strategies in here, the largest number for any of them, given how important that is, of course. So doing things like amending the height standards for the town center and central business districts, exploring opportunities to get grants from the Division of Water Resources for stream bank restoration and trail development, and reviewing your parking standards with regard to things like satellite parking requirements as they exist today. And of course, in the development section there, we also had the future land use map discussed in the hearing earlier. Of course, you know, main sections of town, we have the downtown that basically comes from, you know, going east of here, back up towards Valley Boulevard, and then the Valley Boulevard corridor, primarily residential in nature through most of the town, with some designated recreation and open space areas as well. Not a significant amount of change from what you see the existing land use pattern looking like. So there's not intended to be macro scale change where there's massive transformation of areas of the community. Really preserving what's in place now with some more finer details on how you develop within those areas rather than transforming large areas of the community into something that it's not today. And the final focus area, municipal services objective, which is to continue to provide high quality public services to the Blowing Rock community and advocate for the improvement of services provided by outside agencies. So among the recommendations and strategies in this one, of the 8, a few listed here, maintaining adequate free parking for residents, exploring the establishment of a public enterprise fund for stormwater services, and working with Watauga County and Caldwell County to improve access to emergency medical services for the residents of Blowing Rock and the surrounding community. Mercifully short.
I like this stuff a little bit.
I think you've all had an opportunity to read it. It's been out there since October 30th in fairly complete form at this point. And so really what we're looking at now is just, are there any additional questions or comments from the planning board as a whole? Again, we had 3 representatives from the board on there. Now we have 3 council representatives as well on that were participants on the steering committee. So I think we had a good participation from elected and appointed officials. So your opportunity again as a board to provide any additional input, feedback in the process, and of course, if any public comment that you want to accept as well at this point.
Let's see if there's public comment.
Heck, I'll jump in. There's a couple mentions in the future, the downtown parking management study and the water and sewer facilities plan. And by the way, you guys did a great job on this. I appreciate the hard work. Where can I get a copy of that? Do I need to come see you, Brian? For both those studies? Sure. They're not online, are they?
I don't think so.
I haven't seen them poking around.
No. It's,
We round them up.
okay.
Would you mind sharing those with the board as a whole? Thank you.
Other questions? We can open it up to the audience too, if there's anybody out there that has a question or comment.
I have one.
Except Kevin.
And I'd share it with Brian and Vaughn, I think. Do you have any thoughts on a different name? Not that it has to be, but, you know, everybody has different names for their, you know, Wallen Rock 2040 or whatever it might be. Boone's got, what's it called, Brian?
Boom tomorrow or
Boom next.
Boone next. I don't like that. I didn't know if anybody, was it your plan? And do you have anything, would you like the way that it is?
Community plan.
I like the way it is.
I do too.
Community plan. Well, our community plan. That's kind of
I guess it's our job between now and the council meetings to find a good, Kevin did ask about it, and I was fresh out of ideas. We've used every combination of, catchy words and plan titles.
Well, the one from 2004 that I was first involved with was the 2004 Wallen Rock Comprehensive Plan. 14 had the term updating, updating what we had done, and it was very intensive, and we had a lot of information. Did a survey prior to the 14 plan. So I don't know if this one's an update to that, but I just thought, that if you thought there ought to be a name that sticks out with this plan. If not, then it'll just be called Wallen Rock Comprehensive Plan.
So if I may make a comment on that, if in the end, after it's adopted, we want to adopt it with a different name, I think that's great. Just for clarity of communication between now and the town council meeting, I would strongly suggest keeping this name because we have, since April, been talking about one thing, and I would hate to get people confused by introducing new terms.
I would comment if you're accepting comments. This is 10,000 hours. Tell me, how many? The vision of the next 10 years, whatever you call it. There's a great footnote in here about anything in here is interrelated to the word parking. You can't deny it. And then there's something in there, let's present a model of how something can be ugly on Main Street. Everybody who's turned this corner says, oh my God, how did the embers get through this process? We just approved one. That's going to be ugly. You know it in your soul. So how do you make this thing say you can't build that ugly thing on Main Street and compromise parking spaces? That's not the way to get downtown, is to walk down Valley Boulevard. And you're saying turn that into commercial? That's exactly right. Take some of the heat off of Main Street. Anyway, that's enough of me, but that's a thank you for doing this. Now we're going to have guts enough to do something.
Oh, please.
Where might I get a copy of that?
Of the plan?
Yeah, do I have to run it off?
It's online.
I know it's online. I just liked his. In color.
I'll round up to 2.
Oh, thank you.
There you go.
Wow.
There we go, success.
I have a second question. I attended the October meeting.
Right.
And filled out one of your cards. And my question was, is there any timeline or priority or dollars associated with any of these objectives?
I think there was some discussion about priority and the decision not to try and rank things when the committee discussed that. We did discuss all the recommendations and notes that we got from everyone, but I don't know if there's any, I wasn't actually at that follow-up meeting. So if anybody that was there wants to share.
I mean, my impression of what we decided is correct in what you said, and the intent, difference from 2014 plan, this plan, the intent was fewer strategic items with the expectation that they would actually all be addressed. May not all come to fruition, but all of them would be addressed over the next 10 years. It was, in one sense, let's not say these are the ones that are going to get done and these are less likely. Let's try and get them all done by having fewer of them.
Was that October meeting, was that the last public meeting on this? Okay.
Until tonight.
Until today. Can I, one more thing, so thank you for coming, because it was good turnout at the October meeting, I thought. There were changes made from the draft that had been out there in October till.
Yeah, that's why I was interested.
Okay, good. I mean, just to say positively, I think there was good attendance, but there were also changes made because of the input received. Now, not everybody's input was exactly what, but there were changes because of people's input from that meeting, which was great.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other business.
Do we need to vote or anything?
If you so choose, you may make a recommendation regarding the plan to the council tonight.
What is it?
That was the next business I was going to bring up.
We'll entertain a motion to recommend the plan to town council.
I would make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Thank you.
I think I heard out of that recommendation, Chris, was to keep the thing like that.
At least through town council.
But I just want to make sure y'all covered.
That is correct.
The question that Jerry raised about, so, and I think you asked the question at the end of that last project. The plan is what it is a plan. The code is what you approve projects based on. If the plan says we should change the code, like we talked about for 6 years now on downtown, we have to change the code which reflects the next person that comes in. Once the code is changed, the next person that looks at downtown, the lot across the street or wherever it might be, do you meet the new design standards or the setbacks or the building height or whatever it might be, parking as well. So the plan is a guide to get us to developing or making changes to the code. The plan also has implementation strategies, and it also is a policy document on how we decide on some issue. So it's not just a checklist, hey, we got everything done. There are some checklist things to do, but it's also a guiding policy. If this comes up, how do we as a community want to treat it? And so it's twofold.
And you know, Kevin, the discussion has been, once this is done, to get back to looking at the codes. There's been some discussion about bringing that group back together and starting to look at the development codes for downtown.
Oh, yeah. Ron, ready?
Tonight's motion or tonight's action may be one of those items. I think we all had heartburn about the duplexes and how that was able to be allowed. And there needs to be some changes made to the code to maybe close that loophole.
Well, along that same line, you talk about commercial development on Valley View. Look at all the abandoned buildings along there now. Look at all the buildings that don't really fit anything. I mean, if that's our gateway to Blowing Rock, in my personal opinion, I think it's horrible looking coming down the hill from South Main Street on the left and the right. I mean, there's just, you still got Ann Furr's building, nothing's been done. You got the Scotchman, nothing's been done. You got all the buildings on the left below now the Peddling Pig, where Papa Joe's restaurant was, abandoned. another abandoned building right next to it or behind it. I mean, if you want commercial development, let's have it. But putting in these townhomes along there, I think actually adds to the ambiance of that corridor versus a vacant lot, particularly if it's screened, like Joe said. And it's gonna be up to a buyer whether they want to spend the money to buy one or not. That's not our decision or our job. But as far as I said earlier, highest and best, best maybe not, highest definitely. You can't put anything commercial on that site. There's no parking. Unless you're gonna build a parking deck off the back and have access off of South Main Street. That would, North Main. That wouldn't be working either. So if we want commercial development, I'm all for it, but let's clean up the mess we got while we're in the process.
That takes private money,
It does.
and no one's coming
And
forward to do such.
And these guys did.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying here. These guys, they're putting their money on where their mouth is, and nobody else is along that stretch.
The term highest and best is really a real estate term.
It is,
Reasonable use is a zoning and planning term.
yes. But I mean, as
Wherever
far,
those two match is where,
but you have to look at it, what I look at is highest and best being highest for property tax, best use. What is it gonna generate for the town? Empty lot doesn't generate much. 8, whatever you wanna call them, townhomes, condominiums, they're gonna generate quite a bit of revenue in property taxes alone. So, I mean, that's my perspective. Like I say, that's personal opinion, so.
you know, that, y'all saw that in that lot. That's a tough lot. And that's what we're faced with more and more, especially even in residential tear downs or a lot that's all there's left. And we're seeing that more and more. There's not much left on the good lot. And that will be true on some of the commercial on 321 is redevelopment in a fashion that is sustaining for many, many years to come. And that takes someone sticking their neck out with some cash to do it.
Well, and also you're talking about commercial. What do you want? Do you want the corridor going into Boone with every fast food restaurant and strip center along the way? Or do you want something, I mean, I don't know what you want in terms of commercial. You want a second Main Street? Yeah, I mean, what do you look at? What are you looking for? Even if it is private money, well, it has to be private money, but what are you looking for in that regard? I mean, that'll come to us, I assume at some point. You're looking for hotels, restaurants, apartments,
Yes,
okay?
but we don't go out looking for it necessarily. People come to us to ask, can we build this? First, is it allowed in that district? And then we move on from there. Project was approved, well, 3 projects approved, and it has a little bit to do with the economy.
Mhm.
The beer and wine place there, the Old Scotchman, the coffee shop on the opposite corner, and then Ann Furr's building. Got it approved with every list of use that's possible.
Yeah.
And that wasn't satisfactory enough, and it's still sitting there. So our role is to help them get through to the finish line, and we can't force them to the next building.
But can you not, take away their permit or whatever we gave them, we
The
can't?
permit goes away after time. They're allowed a certain period of time to start it, complete it.
Right.
And they have 2 years right off the bat. Beyond that, they can secure an additional vested right to continue the project by either extending the permit through the council or obtaining a building permit, and that triggers a new clock for them.
Okay.
But they're all kind of running out right now. If you recall the project that 444 is going to do, they had a 5-year vesting, right, and approved in December of 19. So their clock's ticking in 5 years. We had never done one for 5 years.
And where's theirs?
Where the,
Water plant.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah,
yeah, where Headwaters is.
you're right,
Yeah.
okay.
They do have plans to start the commercial, the construction office building, which is up on 321. So they'll want to move ahead with that.
We're in a weird transition, I think, with the widening of 321. I think we're going to get in that time frame of, we're going to start seeing more out there, I think now. Everybody's trying to figure things out. I don't have any other business. Kevin kind of give you some updates. Some of those are moving forward. It's just been personal issues with the developers and project owners. The project, the coffee shop, I guess you've noticed it is for sale. And they've lost an investment there. So that would come back before us. But the other projects are moving forward. They're just hanging on with the time frame. It's getting closer.
Does that include the boutique hotel at Laurel and Wallingford? It's,
Back here,
yeah, you know, it's.
Pine and Main.
Yeah, well, it's,
Pine and Laurel, sorry. They are stepping back, rethinking some things, but right now they're still moving forward still permitted as a hotel. But that's all we know at this time.
so how long is that gonna continue to look kind of the way it looks? Or do we have any way to?
Well, they'll be on their own timeframes, like Kevin was saying. I mean, it depends on where they're at in their project, what kind of permits they've got, what kind of work's being done, how much work's been done. They've been progressing with some works. I mean, they're gonna, eventually, if they don't do work, they'll be set on a time frame.
But I mean, you know, the
But right now,
around it is kind of falling down or some construction type stuff, just.
Yeah, right now, their intent's to button the side up a little bit more, and I think they're kind of assessing the project. And I think we'll know a little bit more probably in the spring. But right now, it's still moving forward as was approved with the hotel there. The Scotchman, I think they're on a time frame right now to start in the spring. They should be starting demo fairly soon. We did speak with them about a month ago, so it's proceeding on. I was trying to think what else is open. And it's still there. So hopefully we'll see some movement on it soon. I think it's still going down to, there's not a use, they don't have a use or someone interested in the property at this time.
Well, we can always use the hardware store here.
I'm sure she would accept the hardware store there if they approached
Yeah, I
her.
wouldn't work there.
Looks like Sweet Mimi's moving back in closer to town.
Pardon?
Sweet Mimi's, looks like they got a sign on the door that they're moving to Sunset.
I didn't know that.
So I wondered if they were occupying Rhodey's old space.
I don't know.
That's tough out there for retail. It's just-
Yeah, you know, Rhodey's moved in there, and that may be honestly a better use there probably than a walk-in retail.
Curiosity moved out, there's
Yeah.
no walk-in traffic. All right. Any other business? Thanks for coming. We're adjourned.
All right. Till next.